Good morning. Good morning to all of you. I'm so glad to see you here with us for worship this morning. I'm thankful for those of you who were able to get up in time during our change to springing forward. I want to warmly welcome those of you who are visiting with us for the first time. Know you are so welcome. This morning, my friends, this morning marks 1 year since we stopped meeting in person. 1 year. I know many of us have spent this week reliving our memories of how life went from seemingly normal to shut down on March 13th. None of us could have predicted a year ago that we would still be in the midst of this pandemic, still worshiping online. And yet, as I committed to you on March 8th, 2020, our last Sunday together in person, we would still be connected as a faith community. We got through this year together. I am so grateful to Beth DePasquale, Linda Weaver, Cynthia Young, Jesse Leong, Mike Schmidt, Maggie Mack for all they have done to serve UUCR and for being the very best colleagues and worship team I could have imagined. I am grateful to you for the support of our dedicated lay leaders, our devoted members and friends who have enabled us not only to survive, but I think we can say we have thrived and transformed ourselves in this totally unprecedented year. We're going to spend the beginning of the service holding space for us to both grieve and mark this year anniversary. During the latter part of the service, we're going to be talking about living with disabilities and accessibility. And I am so pleased to introduce you, hi Joy, to our special guest this morning, Dr. Joy Carroll, who has been one of my spiritual companions for almost 20 years. Joy is a nationally recognized retreat and worship leader, speaker, spiritual director, counselor, and author. And she's going to be joining me in a little while for a dialogue about living and growing with disabilities. I'm lighting a special candle this morning for the families of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. Yesterday, as you probably know, was the 1 year anniversary of Breonna Taylor's murder. And so I ask you to hold her family in your heart. I also am lighting today's special candle for the families of the more than 10,000 people in the US who died of COVID just this past week. I'm leading worship this morning with Linda Weaver, our Director of Religious Education, and our accompanist, Jesse Leong. Cynthia Young, our music director, is on leave today, but you will see her later in the videos, and she as always chose our music for today. Beth DePasquale is running the technical side of worship this morning with backup from Mike Schmidt, and Maggie Mack is going to be your usher in the chat. I have a couple of quick announcements. First, I'm pleased to tell you that we raised almost $100,000 last night at the stewardship event. And I want to thank the amazing team that put on that event. If you weren't there, you really missed something special with guest Alan Naylor. I want to tell you, though, that 2/3 of you still haven't pledged yet. And so our campaign is going on for the next 2 weeks. It actually closes right after Easter. And we're going to be sending you another link, another email with a link on Monday and an e-card. And so if you haven't made your pledge, please, please, please do it as soon as you can. And we will also post a link later in the service if you want to make your pledge today. I also want to tell you that during this week coming up, I'm going to be leading 3 different webinars, 3 of the same webinars, but 3 times on COVID and what we are doing so we can reopen safely, hopefully by homecoming this year. So I hope you will join me for one of those meetings. So it's that time. Let us center ourselves for worship. Please take your deepest breath of the morning with me. My colleague, the Reverend Elizabeth Bucky, posted alternative words to Seasons of Love this week on Facebook. How do you measure a year? In Zoom calls, in nose swabs, in protests, in cups of coffee, in breakdowns, in masks, in laughter, in strife. 525,600 minutes. More than 525,600 people we've lost. 525,600 minutes. How do you measure a life and measure the cost? In truths that we've learned, in the times we've cried, in the bridges we burned, or the way that 532,000 people have died. Beth DePasquale, our wonderful office director, has created a very moving video of this past year from photos you sent in from your year in COVID. Let us watch it now in silence, and then we'll take some time to share together. I invite you into a time of reflection and response. A year ago, the world shut down. Our world shut down. We have lost so much. More than 532,000 people have died of COVID, 20,000 in just the past 2 weeks. 1 in 3 of us know someone who died because of COVID. Let me invite you to put their names now into the chat. Some of us have lost our jobs, finances, health, security. All of us have lost handshakes, hugs, time with family members, travel, parties, nights out, live sports, singing. We lost in-person church services. Let me invite you to name your losses in the chat. Grandchildren. Yet we also gained, didn't we? Clarity, resilience, time with our partners, and for those of you who are parents, time with your young children, time to reflect, new skills, becoming friends with your neighbors, opportunities to be of service, a sense of greater community. Let me invite you to name, what have you gained? What have you learned this past year in the chat? We have gained Zoom. We have indeed gained Zoom. Patience, special time with people, new skills, friendships, appreciation. This year, my friends, has changed us. We have changed, perhaps even for the better. We are stronger. We are more resilient. We became more like the people we are called to be. We are still together. And so let me invite you to share our gratitude for each other and for those who journeyed through the year with you. Please enter those names in the chat box. We are grateful to be together. And now Linda will lead us in the chalice lighting.
Good morning. My name is Linda Weaver, and I'm the Director of Religious Education at UUCR. As Reverend Debra lights the UU Ruston chalice, you may wish to light a candle in your own home. Our chalice lighting words this morning are by the Reverend Ma Teresa Tut Gustilo Giardo, who serves in the Philippines. We cast not our eyes below. We say to ourselves, we are how we came, wounded from struggles, triumphant in our survival, entitled by birthright to belong to this, the only humankind there is, saying, I am included, I belong, I am here, and I will be and do. I will breathe joy into a desolation. I will breathe peace into conflict. I will breathe life into destruction. I will be the earth I wish to see. I am growth and hope and glee. In our congregation, we intentionally recommit to each other every Sunday by singing a covenant together. Love is the spirit of this church. We will play our own UUCR congregation and choir video for you as we all sing along. The words will be visible in your chat box. If you're visiting us for the first time, please accept this song as our blessing to you.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to help one another in fellowship.
This month is Stewardship Month, as you all know. And so for the next month, we will be hearing from members of our community about why they donate to UUCR. This morning, we will hear from Kathy Dalianis, your board treasurer. Kathy has been an active member of UUCR for almost a decade. She and her husband, David Nemi, have both served on our board of directors. Kathy has been involved with the board, with our membership committee, as an active member of our knitting group. And I want to tell you all, she has been an absolute delight for the staff to work with as treasurer. Let us listen together to Kathy.
Hi, I'm Kathy Dalianis. My husband David Nemi and I have been members of this church for almost 10 years now. Before we came to UUCR, we were pretty much unchurched. We had left behind our childhood faiths of Greek Orthodox and Lutheran, and we didn't really do anything until we got to the point where our kids were getting to a certain age, and we thought, maybe they would benefit from some kind of spiritual background. And it's funny because we said, we're doing this for the kids. But I think deep down, we were kind of looking for something that maybe we didn't realize we were missing in our lives. So we went online, we researched this church, we read about the 7 principles and decided, this sounds like a good place for us. So then it took another few months before we actually made it into the door. And when we came in, we were warmly greeted at the door. The sermon spoke to us. And we've never looked back. We've been here almost 10 years now. So, and what we found at UUCR is a place to explore spiritual paths, a place to put our values into action and help make our community and our country and our world a better place. And we've just gotten so much great connection from the people we've met here. And some of these people have become members of our extended family. Our kids have more or less grown up in this church. They've both gone through the religious ed program, participated in the youth group. And even though they're really quiet and they don't talk much, I think they've learned some things that they're going to take with them as they move forward in their lives. Well, David and I have, from the first couple weeks we were here, we've stepped in and stepped up and joined different organizations and groups within the church. You know, I think the second visit, David joined the choir, and I joined multiple committees. And through the years, we've served on, you know, helping teach our kids and other kids in religious ed. We have both served on the board. He just stepped down, and I've just stepped back onto the board for my second tour. We are both on multiple committees. And, you know, we believe in giving back to this community. And more than that, we value this church and we want to see it succeed. So, and as your current treasurer, I know more than ever that what it takes to run a church like this, because I pay the bills every month. So not only do we give of our time, but we have always donated to the church. And every year we try to give a little more. So this year we are increasing our pledge by 20% because this church means a lot to us and we want to see it continue to succeed and grow. Thank you.
Thank you to Kathy.
Now is the time for all ages, so gather around your screens. You've probably noticed that all bodies are different. That's a good thing, right? Otherwise, we couldn't even recognize our family or best friends. Our bodies also have different abilities, and some of us use adaptive equipment to help. Maybe you have braces on your teeth or once did. When I was little, I had a big gap between my front teeth and couldn't make the S sound. Braces close the gap, allowing me to say S. Many of us wear glasses or have contacts so we can see better. Some have hearing aids, and to help move around, people may wear braces on their legs or use a cane, a walker, a wheelchair, or a scooter. Students may use assistive technology to help them learn, and some people use technology to speak. This equipment is amazing. It can make life so much better. But still, sometimes we face barriers. Imagine a playground near your home. Think of what you might see or hear there. What are the children doing? Then think about what you liked best about going to a playground, either yesterday or many years ago. Maybe you liked going up and down the slide, maybe swinging or going across the monkey bars or something else. Now, what would it be like for a child who couldn't see? A child who couldn't hear? Someone who uses a wheelchair, or someone who gets overwhelmed by movement or sound? It might not be a lot of fun, right? Happily, there is an amazing playground near us in McLean, Virginia. Its name combines the names of several children. This is Climmy-Johntree Park. Climmy-Johntree, where every child can play, as it says in this sign. Isn't that marvelous? Think about it. Every child can play. The park is designed so children won't face the barriers that you may have noticed as you thought about your neighborhood park. Here's a photo of the playground there. The smooth rubber surface makes it easy for people to move around, whether they're walking or using a wheelchair or other assistance. There are ramps to the playground equipment, so there are no stairs to block the way or to have to climb up. Instead of monkey bars, there's an arch that anyone can reach, whether they're playing near the ground or climbing up above. And there is a carousel sunk in the ground so people in wheelchairs can roll on. This is another example of the playground equipment with a ramp. It's on the side of the playground and it's away from the other equipment. So with that, and along with its gentle swaying motion, it could be a calming place for someone who is overwhelmed by the movement and sounds that often fill up a playground. This train engine is easy to access, and the gauges are not only painted on, They're cut in the surface so you can feel them. In the park, there are also signs with Braille, which is raised dots that are read with the fingers. This sign also has the names of colors spelled in American Sign Language alphabet. So R-E-D, for example. When I was little, my favorite piece of playground equipment was the swings. In Clemmy John Tree Park, there are swings with high backs to provide extra support. And there's a very special swing. This is a Liberty swing. It holds a wheelchair, so a child in a wheelchair can use this without having someone lift them into the swing. Can you imagine what it might mean to have that kind of freedom and independence? We are so lucky to have Clemmy John Tree Park nearby. It's truly a place where all children can play. If you'd like to visit, it's in McLean, Virginia, on Georgetown Pike near Langley. May we all remember this park and the joy that is possible when barriers are removed.
Thank you, Linda. How lovely to know that that's right here in our community. I plan to visit. This is the time in our service where we invite you to light a virtual or a real candle in your home for a joy or concern in your heart. You're invited to share those joys or concerns in the chat box. Please remember that everything you are writing is public. Please take the time to read what each other puts in the chat box. And when you are done, we invite you into a time of meditation, reflection, and prayer as Jesse plays Für Elise by Ludwig van Beethoven, a man who struggled with disabilities of his own. Please join me in the spirit of meditation and prayer. Spirit of life and love, we feel your presence this morning. We feel it in the sun and the blue sky, and the daffodils and the crocuses and the buds appearing in the sky. We are surrounded by the goodness of creation. We hold in our hearts all that we have lost in this past year. Eric and Vicky, Dinky, Steve, Jerry, Bernie, Taz, Aaron, Carrie, Grace, Carol, all gone too soon from this disease. We reach out our hearts to all those families who struggle today, to Dawn's family mourning her death, to those who are struggling with COVID, job insecurity, relationship difficulties. And yet we find reasons to celebrate the good news of a biopsy, a birthday of one who wasn't supposed to live this long, a new heart beating in the chest of a friend, a grandson getting married, far away, but ascending love. Joy for all those who participate and lead and share in this community with their gifts and their times and that wonderful gala we have. We have changed, the world has changed, and yet we can rejoice in a new day, a new opportunity. Rejoice in this community that helps us get through. So may it be. Amen. We're going to now watch a really wonderful video that Cynthia Young found. It's called Amazing Grace. You'll now recognize the tune. It's performed by the King's Singers, a professional vocal ensemble from England, and a group called the Soundabout Inclusive Choir. Soundabout is an organization which runs inclusive choirs throughout the United Kingdom. For this project, they joined with the King's Singers to center the voices of people with profound and multiple learning disabilities. This special video was created by music therapist Steve Dunichi, who arranged the music around a lead singer of the Soundabout Choir to illustrate that people with disabilities should not just be included, they should be given the chance to lead. I am so happy to welcome you to UCR. I just wish it was in person.
I'd love to be there in person, but I'm delighted to be here. I'm still so touched by that last music. I can hardly speak. It was so moving. Thank you.
It is indeed a three handkerchief morning, I think. So let me introduce you all to Joy. Joy is a retreat and workshop leader. She's a national speaker. She's a spiritual director, a preacher, a counselor, and an author. She has been my spiritual director for almost 20 years, and I'm really proud to both call her a mentor and a friend. Joy lived and worked in the developing world for organizations such as the Ford Foundation, the United Nations Development Program, and Save the Children. She has an honorary doctorate in human letters from Nebraska Wesleyan and master's degrees from General Theological Seminary, as well as a degree from the University of Maryland, not too far from us, in counseling and psychology. Joy has unbelievably had 8 close encounters with death in her life. And since the early ones of those, she dedicated herself to spirituality, healing, and wholeness. Joy and I met in February of 2002 at a workshop on dealing with the trauma after 9/11. She worked extensively with survivors and families of that tragedy in New York City. 6 years ago, Joy came down with something called paraneoplastic syndrome, which has harmed and really restricted her ability to walk. She currently lives in Penny Farms, Florida, where she had to move to be near the Mayo Clinic after her illness. And so, Joy, I'm so happy to welcome you today and introduce her to all of you.
Thank you so much. And I'm so happy to be here with you.
So, Joy, let's start with talking a little bit about your life in the past 6 years. I actually have very strong memories right before you became ill. Ralph and I had visited you in your wonderful cottage in August in Hampton Bays. And that was right after you had come home from Greece. Tell people what happened next.
Well, life is full of surprises. I want everyone to realize that. We think that everything's going to be great. And it was so great for me. I was working all over the world. I have had the opportunities to talk, speak, preach, do international work for many years, and nothing really stopped me. But suddenly one day I couldn't really walk very well. I was in Greece and I started falling, and I couldn't swim very well in the sea, and I couldn't get out of the water. And when I got back to New York City, where I lived, I started falling extensively. I fell so many times and I couldn't even get my feet to move. I didn't break any bones, fortunately, but I was hospitalized, and for a long time, no one could find out what was wrong with me in that beloved New York City, which knows everything. And finally, I had this marvelous Jewish neurologist who said to me, I'm not going to let you die, Joy. You love life so much. You're so full of it that I'm going to find out what's wrong with you, and we're going to help you in some way. So she sent my blood and my spinal fluid to all the really good research centers in the United States. And the only one who came back with a diagnosis was Mayo Clinic in Florida. And it was paraneoplastic syndrome, which means that somewhere I had some kind of undiagnosed cancer that was setting off my antibodies, which were trying to kill it. And my antibodies went crazy and started attacking my central nervous system, which kept me from walking. And it was a long process. And it was a time of grief, loss, despair. Please don't think that when you get something terrible, you have to feel absolutely chipper, happy, as though nothing is wrong. You can grieve, and you can ask for help, and you can become weaker, and you will find your strength in that process. So now I'm living here near Mayo Clinic in Penny Farms, and busier than I can even imagine. So we'll get on to that.
Yeah. So I so remember how scary that time was, and how amazing it was when they finally had an answer and something that could be done for you. Tell us, so you have been so independent, and what people need to know is you are still so independent, but you were so independent, and global travel and your work was so important to you. What was it like to find yourself as a person with disabilities after all those years?
Well, it was terrible. It was honestly terrible. I was so sad and full of despair. And I really feel that we can learn so much from our disabilities. I now know that, but immediately that's not what you feel. You just feel the loss. And I think of all the people we've lost with COVID, and it's so amazing to be here today with you as we think of this past year and of the many losses so many people have felt. It's terrible to lose things, and we need to grieve when that happens. And I needed to grieve. And I needed to also stop and think, what was there left of me? Was there something left of me? I could no longer do my work. I could no longer travel. I could no longer live in my beloved New York City. I was not able to even have the same friends. I was going to have to move to a place I didn't know anyone, and to a hospital that would maybe save my life, or maybe I would die. We didn't know. I am one of the very few people who is still alive. I'm going on actually my 8th year, Deborah. Uh, I was diagnosed, and I was told there was a possibility I might be able to live for 3 years. No one has passed 3 years. I have. And Mayo Clinic says it's not just because they're doing all these wonderful treatments to me, it's because I'm involved, and I am passionate, and I want to live, and I want to find out what my strengths are and my abilities, and not just grieve and feel sorry for myself. It's easy to do that when we do lose everything.
Yeah. So I have just been so inspired by being able to be part of your journey and be in conversation with you. And I know that you have had these also spiritual awakenings or lessons that you've learned, both from this, but also the fact that, I mean, you've just wrote a book called The 9 Lives of Joy Carroll, which I recommend that people can find on Amazon, because you've actually almost died eight times now. So Share a little bit about what you've learned.
If you are an open person and you begin to go deep inside and think about who you really are and learn and be willing to see not only your weaknesses and your problems, but say, what are my strengths? It's such a spiritual journey to go into oneself and learn as much as you can. It's been amazing because my really close encounters with death have taught me to look at myself deeper than I ever did before. Not just to live in the past. Oh, wasn't that a wonderful, good old days? No, no. What is it now? Who am I now? What is it I love? Where's my passion? What skills do I still have that I can share? And share, share, share. We need to share. And we are whole people, even if we're disabled, even if we lose so many things. Look at that last music we just heard. Those kids who really could barely sing, they were whole people. And I have learned that no matter what our problems are, there's something great about us that we have to discover. We have to look for it. We have to be willing to say, yes, I am a real person. I am going to live my life fully and do the things that I ought to do. And I'm still doing them in spite of my disabilities.
Yeah. So you're so inspiring to me. So I've heard, you say and other people say that people are only temporarily able-bodied, that most of us are going to experience disabilities, particularly as we age. What do you want us to, those of us who are temporarily able-bodied, what do you want us to know?
Okay, number one, never take anything for granted. Be so grateful when you have an able body. We just go right on through life. We don't realize at any moment that can all change. So be grateful for whatever you have if you're able bodied. And then begin to think about truly what are your honest skills, your real skills. Not the fake ones, not just the professional degrees you have and all the experiences you've done, but what skills do you have? Maybe it's you can sing. Maybe it's that you can play the piano. Maybe it's that you can listen to someone. Maybe you can write a letter of encouragement. Maybe you can put something in the chat box that will touch someone else's life. But figure out who you are, because baby, you ain't always going to be who you are, especially if you get old enough. You might lose your hearing, your sight, your mental ability. There's so many things that can easily be changed, but find out what it is that you love and do it. Do it now while you're able-bodied, and do it when you're not able-bodied. We are disabled from time to time, believe me, and live it fully. Don't say, I give up. Never give up. It's on my refrigerator door. Falling down is part of life. Getting up is living. And never, never, never give up.
Which you clearly have not. So we've made a commitment here at UUCR that we really want to do a better job of improving accessibility. And when we come back, we're going to be doing a whole variety of things. So what do you think is important? And I know you've talked with other churches about this as well, and your own home church. What do you want congregations to know about how do we honor and really truly include and welcome people with disabilities?
I probably am not saying anything new, but people who are disabled are discriminated against. I have learned that. We are shunned. We are treated differently. We are avoided. Do not imagine that because someone has some kind of disability, mental, cognitive, physical, there's so many disabilities, we can't even begin to talk about all of them. Treat them like a human being, because we are human beings and we are fully functioning and we are able to do things that you can never imagine. And so if there are people who are disabled, don't overreact to it and say, oh, I'll get it, I'll do it for you, I'll do it for you. No, then you just make us feel like we're fools or we're weak, that we can't do anything. Ask us if you can help and honor us, because we are fully functioning people. We just have something that's a bit different about us. And it is, we can't just say we're different people. We are disabled people by something that has happened to us, or we were born disabled, or we're getting old, or whatever it is. But treat those people who come in the door of your church as though they are your friend and they are real and they can do things. They are a human being, and help them to live fully into life.
So Joy, in closing, and you and I could obviously talk for hours because we have talked for hours, but I wonder if you might reflect a little bit with us on this anniversary of the pandemic. I think it's actually a remarkable synchronicity that you and I met right after 9/11, and here you're with me today, reflecting on this anniversary. How do traumatic experiences like living through 9/11, like the pandemic, like your own health trauma and near-death experiences, how do these experiences shape us, and how do we learn spiritually from them?
Well, to start with 9/11, Deborah, you and I were involved with that. And I think we learned that after the tragedy in New York City of the falling of the towers, and all 7 of the World Trade Center buildings came down, and many other buildings, and we lost so many people, and we injured people, and we had a lot of trauma. But what happened is that people gathered together again to offer help and love and compassion. And New York City was one of the best places to live in after 9/11 for quite a few months. I think crime went way down. Everybody fought to give their seat to each other on the subway, but somehow there was compassion and caring. And sometimes the worst brings out the best in us. And all my close encounters with death have taught me so much. They've not only taught me that I'm a person of value and worth, and that I have so much to give to people, but that I can't waste my time thinking I'll do it tomorrow. No, tomorrow may not come in the same way. If I think of someone that, ooh, I should call, or I need to write a letter to them, or I need to get in touch with them in some way. We don't write letters, I know, anymore, but once in a while, a letter is great. I do it because there may not be another opportunity. My closest friend here on the campus died so quickly. Fortunately, we had talked the night before, and he was very sick, and he said, Joy, if something happens to me, be sure to look after my wife and my children, because you're part of our family. And so I can do that. There's always something we can do. So everybody, whether it's 9/11, whether it's a pandemic, look at all the wonderful things that were in your chat box that people wrote, that they've learned. We have learned so much from this year. It's been a terrible year. I admit that. I have grieved. I've lost many friends. I lost many firefighter friends at 9/11, and I've lost many friends from the COVID, and I've lost many friends just naturally to death. So live life fully, reach out, share, care, be kind, never regret that you've done something that you can't undo. Forgive. Go back and ask for forgiveness, and most of all, forgive yourself. That's a good lesson that I have learned. And go on with your life. Live it fully.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joy. Thank you for being with us today. I'm so happy that I got to share you with my community, and I'm so grateful that you have been part of my life for the last 20 years. So friends, we're going to end with a new hymn today, hymn number 1053, those of you who took home teal hymnals. It's going to be led by our wonderful member, Lisa Gunderman, who is accompanied by Jesse Leong. The words speak both to disabilities, but I think it also speaks to the larger message of loving and living our lives as well as we can. Please sing along with Lisa and Jesse. The words will be in your chat box.
How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul. How could anyone ever tell you you were anything less than beautiful? How could anyone ever tell you you were less than whole? How could anyone fail to notice that your loving is a miracle? How deeply you're connected to my soul.
As we lead this time together, may we remember that no matter how weak or how frightened we may be, we all have unique gifts that we can share with others. Unique gifts that we can share. We can make a difference in our world. Let us support those who are broken, who are hurt, who are disabled. Let us celebrate life together, and let us do justice to all in the world. And may our days be filled with hope and with life. Amen.
Amen, indeed. Our closing music this morning is from the Reverend Dan Schatz, who is our minister of the UU Church of Westchester, Pennsylvania, and a Grammy Award-winning musician. He wrote a special song for our one-year anniversary called Follow the Flame, and he gave me permission to share it with you this morning. The words will be on the screen if you would like to join him in singing.
Time you ever knew, the only thing that you could do, carry the flame, sickness spreading through the land, you held your spirit in your hands and carried the flame. Sorrows gathered round, you raised your head and you stayed your ground. You carried the flame through endless days of the hardest living. You kept on loving, kept on giving. You kept on and carried the flame. Raise it high, Send its beacon through the sky, keep it strong and shining through the pain. Let it rise and let it grow. Let it light the world, you know, let it glow. Carry the flame. And when the day is done at last, we take on the spark you've passed. And carry the flame. We send it on, the kindling hope of a rising dawn. In a song, we carry the flame. The flame, raise it high, send its beacon through the sky, keep it strong and shining through the pain. Let it rise and let it grow. Let it light the world, you know, let it glow. Breathe the flame. We are nurses, doctors, teachers. We are children, parents, preachers, and we all carry the flame. We are scientists and cargo packers, farmers, singers, grocery stackers, young and old. We carry the flame. Carry the flame, raise it high, send its beacon through the sky, keep it strong and shining through the pain. Let it rise and let it grow. Let it light the world, you know, let it glow. Carry the flame. Let it glow. Carry the flame.
We carried the flame, my friends. Our worship service is coming to a close. Again, I want to thank my dear Joy Carroll for joining us today. And I was reflecting as I was listening to Dan sing. Joy has accompanied me throughout my entire time in ministry. And so I'm so grateful for what I have learned from her. And I hope I have brought some of that to this community. You kept on loving, you kept on giving. So before we start our breakout rooms, we ask you to make your contribution to our virtual collection plate at the link on the slide or in the chat box or by mailing in your check. Please do log into the breakout rooms this morning after Jesse finishes playing for us. I'm going to encourage you to talk about what this year has meant to you. And let me remind you to make your pledge for next year if you haven't already done so. We also invite you, and I see some of you already have, to use the chat as a virtual reception line. If you'd like to tell us something about the service, please feel free to type it into the chat. And please know your words of inspiration mean so much to your team who works so hard to bring you these services. Before we put up the offering slide, let me close this special service by saying the words I offer you each week. My friends, go in peace. May our real service begin. Amen.